Here we are again. Chickens, dogs, what else? Maybe it'll be a drone next. I've never seen a drone here. If I do, somebody may lose it. Well, here we are. Some interesting things happened this week, or last week I should say, which have got me thinking about a living wage again. Now there are two things that we've seen over the last, is going to happen over the next few days, or the next few weeks, is the major decrease in Jobseeker and the removal of Jobkeeper, which has still been paid to 1.5 million workers in this country, which is 1 in 8 workers. So we have an issue. The government has decided, the federal government, the one under siege currently because of the behaviour of its membership and members, has made a very important decision. It has made the decision to force people on Jobseeker back into the job market. And it's done this by two strategies. One, it's minimised the increase in Jobseeker. It's gone up by $3.27 a day. That's right, a day. So from $40 a day, it's 43 and 30. What is it? 57 cents a day. What you need to survive on. That's obviously for the single person. And it's increased, and this is the important part. It's not the increase, the minimal increase in the Jobseeker allowance, but it has increased the number of times from 8 to 20 that a job seeker must apply for a job. And if they don't take that job, they will be removed from the job seeker payment, irrespective of how it's not suitable for them. So this is an important move by the federal government, because when Jobseeker was doubled, many people felt that it was better to stay on Jobseeker than get a poorly paid, insecure, part-time job. Average wage, $20 an hour if you're lucky. That's if you're lucky. So what the government has done, it has changed the rules to force people back into the job market to take poorly paid, part-time, non-unionised work in the community. The type of work which we see consistently in the service industries, in childcare, aged care, catering, dining, fast food, and the list goes on and on. So this is the problem. Now the second issue that's cropped up over the last few weeks is the issue of automation. Everywhere you go, we are seeing the effects of automation, whether it's in your local supermarket where you've got, your self-checkout, or whether it's your local bank where you're forced into computer banking, or whether it's your local energy company which forces you to use methods of payments which are automated. We've got the ridiculous situation today where the Australian Tax Office refuses to take cheques because they want to automate the whole system. So automation is important because within 10 years, and these are not my figures, 1 in 8 Australian jobs, that's 1.5 million jobs will be lost. So the effective unemployment rate will continue to rise, irrespective of government policy forcing people looking for jobs that are non-existent. Currently there is 1 job for every 15 job seeker. So this raises some really important questions about the nature of society and how wealth is generated and how wealth is distributed in our society. Interestingly, the ancient Romans had exactly the same problem. They had exactly the same problem. 2,000 years ago, when we had the Roman Republic, the plebeians were an important part of the community because they provided the muscle to ensure that the Roman Empire expanded. They had political rights. This is during the period of the Republic. But what happened with the expansion of the Roman Empire what happened is slaves, who you didn't need to pay, took over the jobs of the plebeians. And you had huge estates with patricians in charge and thousands of slaves running these estates with the carrot of citizenship if they behave themselves. A little bit like bringing people here on temporary work visas and promising them citizenship if they stay 3 or 4 or 5 years. Same concept. So the Roman Republic was faced with a problem. They had a underclass, a growing underclass, which was revolting because they did not have enough food, shelter, and they had political power. This is during the period of the Republic. So how did they solve the issue? They solved the issue through the old slogan, bread and circuses. They provide the basic necessities, oil, flour, etc. And they provided subsidised accommodation. And then they provided circuses, the Colosseum. At one stage during the Roman Empire, there were 124 public holidays in a year where you would have something happening at your local Colosseum. So they were able to contain any rebellion or revolutionary activity by providing both sustenance and entertainment for the plebeians, and the slaves did the work. Let's fast forward to 2021. And it's pretty much the same in a liberal democratic society, in a parliamentary democracy. Whether you're employed or unemployed, whether you own land or you don't own land, in 2021 we have universal suffrage, both male and female, for all citizens over the age of 18. That means people have political power to some degree, and they're able to determine to some degree who their leaders will be. So they've got political powers like the plebeians did 2,000 years ago. At the same time, we have problems with automation, where we no longer need everybody in society to work in order for society to function, profit, and prosper. Automation is about removing people from the work process, which is good if there's an alternative. The dilemma in the 21st century, in 21st century Australia in 2021, is automation becomes a problem because people's livelihood is intertwined with a wage. Although over about a third of Australians rely on social security benefits to survive, old age pensioners, single parents, people on disability support pensions, unemployment benefits, those who work are basically wage slaves. And the type of life that you can live in a capitalist society, whether it's secure and enjoyable, whether you go on overseas trips, eat at the best restaurants, wear the best clothes, have the latest car, is all dependent on an income stream. And as only 8% of Australians are investors, only 8% of Australians use Australia's investment-friendly laws to enrich themselves, like negative giving, franking credits. The rest of the population that is not on social security benefits, and most people on social security benefits are living below or near the poverty line, are wage slaves. They may work for themselves, they may be in a micro business or a small business or a large business, or they may work for a corporation for a wage. But ultimately, the type of life you lead in a capitalist society, one which is based on private investment for private profit, is dependent on your income stream. And in Australia in 2021, if you do not have a wage, you have to rely on inadequate social security benefits to survive. And at the best of times, all you can do is basically pay your bills and survive from one day to the next. And if there's some type of disaster, you're not able to cope with it. And we've seen an increasing number of people, especially younger people, finding themselves in a ridiculous situation where they can't even scrape a deposit for a home, let alone buy a home. so they're forced to rent. So this is the dilemma. We have an economic system which is tied into a wage system. And if you are not part of the wage system, you live a subsistence lifestyle. So what's the solution? Well, public interest before corporate interest, one of our central planks, and it's been a central plank for a number of years, is the concept of a living wage. And the concept of a living wage is nothing new. As I said, we saw it during the Roman Empire, during the Roman Republic over 2,000 years ago. So what is a living wage? A living wage is a wage which is paid to every person in the community, and obviously extra is paid for dependents. Everybody, irrespective of income, whether you're a multi-billionaire or whether you're on unemployment benefits, everybody would receive a living wage. That means that you get rid of the bureaucracy that now administers the system of determining who's on a disability pension, who's on an unemployment benefit, who is on a single parent's benefit. This whole administrative network, which sucks up over 1 million public servants, will disappear overnight. Because every fortnight, this money appears in your account. And it's structured in such a way as to ensure that you have income above your basic human needs. Now I can see you looking at me and saying, fairyland, fairyland, how do we fund a living wage? And why should a billionaire get a living wage? Obviously the concept of everybody getting a living wage, the same living wage, plus additions for dependents, is based on the idea of breaking down the bureaucracy which is needed to administer the system. But at the other end, if you don't have an income during that financial year, you don't pay taxes. But if you do have an income, that living wage comes back to the government. So let's say you earn $50,000. That's your living wage, $1,000 a week. You don't pay any tax if you don't work. Now if you work on top of that and your wage comes to $100,000, then say 25% of that living wage will be paid back in taxes. If it's $200,000, it's 75%, and it's $300,000. All the living wage comes back through the taxation system. So although everybody receives the same living wage, let's say $1,000 a week, at the end of the financial year, that money comes back in the taxation system if you decide to work. Now obviously a living wage doesn't give you a luxurious lifestyle, it basically looks after your basic necessities and you don't live in poverty. So obviously if work is available, a significant number of people would continue to work and pay back that living wage through the taxation system. But it ensures, we've even got a frog now has joined the chorus, which is good to hear, especially at this time of the afternoon. We've got a bird and we've got a frog. If you listen carefully, you'll hear the frog. So we're getting back to the living wage. So you break down the bureaucracy, you save money by not having the bureaucracy. You don't have to go through all this rigmarole. You're a citizen or a resident, you receive the living wage. Obviously allowances are made for asylum seekers and refugees. And then if you work, it comes back, depending on how much you earn, to the government and the taxation system. Again, I can hear you say, you're like that frog in the pond, you're croaking about something that's never going to happen. Well, it's very simple. We've seen a concept of a living wage with Jobkeeper. With the advent of COVID-19, we saw the advent of a living wage, but we saw the government go into massive debt. Now, how would you fund a living wage? How could you fund a living wage today? Not through revolution, not even through rebellion, but through passage of legislation through Parliament. How would you fund a living wage? The first tax would be a 1% tax on any stocks and shares that are sold in the stock market. You sell a stock, you buy a stock, 1% automatically goes into the government coffers. And considering 76 billion were paid in dividends by private corporations to shareholders, and considering the amount of money which flows through the Australian stock market, a 1% tax would raise up to 70, possibly $80 billion per year in taxation revenue. And when you think Australia's taxation revenue is around $480 billion a year, that is a significant addition. That's an addition of about 18 to 20%. Another tax which can be introduced tomorrow through parliamentary legislation, which most people wouldn't even notice, is a 1% financial transaction tax. And we need to look at a financial transaction tax because, as we've seen with the little bit of runaround with Google and Facebook in terms of getting them to pay a little bit of money to Murdoch and his crew and all the screaming that went on, a 1% financial tax is relatively easy to apply, and it would mean that companies like this, especially transnational corporations that are headquartered in Bermuda, in the Caribbean, or the Isle of Man off the coast of England, would actually be paying tax. Every dollar which goes through the coffers, ka-ching, 1 cent automatically flows to the Treasury. And considering that paper money is disappearing, and considering that most transactions which are occurring in Australia, an increasing number of transactions occur through the electronic media, it's very easy for that 1% to be automatically collected by the Treasury. So we have a mechanism via which to resolve poverty in this country. We have a mechanism by which to resolve the problems which are caused by automation in terms of increasing unemployment. We have a mechanism to ensure that everybody enjoys a decent standard of living, and it can be done tomorrow. You don't need a revolution. You don't need a rebellion. You don't even need protests in the streets. What you need is a parliament that is willing to take the hard measures, hard legislative measures to ensure transnational corporations pay their fair share of tax, and those investors who pay minimal tax pay tax through a 1% stock market tax. So it's easy, it can be done tomorrow, only one problem. Not one of the major political parties is willing to look at the concept of a living wage as a central plank in their political platform. Public interest before corporate interests would agitate consistently for the introduction of a living wage. We need a living wage in order to ensure that the divisions which exist in society, the increasing divisions which exist between those with disposable income and those without disposable income and those with no income except social security benefits, those increasing divisions are addressed, and they're addressed urgently, because the damage which is being caused to this country's people, the incalculable damage which has been caused to this country's people, does not need to continue. What we need is political representatives who have the audacity to take back power from that 1% that own the means of production, distribution, exchange and communication, by introducing legislation in Parliament which reflects the will of the people and which looks after the interests of the many before the few. So if you haven't joined PIPSI, and obviously you'd be one of the great majority of Australians who haven't joined PIPSI, I encourage you to join public interest before corporate interests today. Today. Because we wish to be registered as a federal political party for the next federal election, which, because of the current problems the Liberal National Party is facing, will most likely now be put back to March next year. We have a window of about 3 or 4 months to get another 120 new members or 110 new members. We need those members as soon as possible. You can download, and then we can apply for registration of federal political party. You can download the application form by going to pipsi.net. You can write to us at Post Office Box 20, Parkville 3052. We'll send you out application forms, or you can leave a message on 0439 395 489 with your contact details, and we'll send you out an application form. We can talk about a living wage and nothing will happen. we can infuse the concept of a living wage in the political program of the political parties in this country, and we can possibly guarantee that Australia will continue to be, not continue, because we lost this little struggle years ago during the deregulation, privatisation, corporatisation, globalisation revolution that swept across the country in the last 40 years. We will guarantee that the interests of the many will be put before the interests of the few, and everybody in this country will live a decent life.